Rabbit&apos Who Framed Roger Rabbit&apos, turns 30, how the and-apos toon-powered classic revolutionized Hollywood. 30 years ago, Robert Zemeckis invited moviegoers to enter a version of 1940s Hollywood where humans and animated toons lived side by side. Released on June 22, 1988, the Disney-produced Who Framed Roger Rabbit was an immediate sensation and remains a mind-blowing visual marvel today. Although past Mouse House movies like Mary Poppins and Bedknobs and Broomsticks had allowed live-action and animated characters to exist in the same frame for portions of the movie, Who Framed Roger Rabbit had to expand that feat to fit a feature-length runtime. Doing that required Zemeckis and his crew, including animation supervisor Richard Williams, to pioneer animation and compositing techniques that are still employed today. If you're trying to single out a scene that best encapsulates the movie's magic, look no further than the Ink and Paint Club sequence where Private Eye Eddie Valiant, Bob Hoskins, pays a visit to a well-known toon watering hole while doing reconnaissance for the studio that employs superstar cartoon bunny Roger Rabbit, voiced by Charles Fleischer. That was where the rubber meets the road, Roger Rabbit scribe Peter Seaman told Yahoo Entertainment when we spoke with him and co-writer, Jeffrey Price. If that scene didn't work, the whole thing wasn't gonna work. It was very, very complicated to shoot. Watch our interview with Seaman and Price, above. According to the screenwriters, Zemeckis always had a grand vision for the Ink and Paint Club as a place where multiple cartoon characters, each of whom had its own bit of funny business, would fill the frame. A cursory glance around the nightclub reveals penguin waiters, an octopus bartender, and a vintage black and white cartoon heroine, whose name rhymes with Stoopy Stoop, slinging drinks. Bob wanted one of those almost Scorsese-like reveals, where you track in and all the stuff is happening, Seaman remembers. We did write gags for like the bartenders. He's got 8 arms, and he's making these different cocktails. We'd write gags for the penguins, and everybody in there. A cartoon octopus tends bar in the Ink and Paint Club and Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Photo, Hulu. More. They also wrote Golden Age cartoon pin-up Betty Boop into the scene before they knew whether or not they would get permission to use her. Because Roger Rabbit was being produced at Disney, the writers had access to the studio's library of characters and, thanks to an unprecedented arrangement with Warner Brothers, brokered by none other than executive producer Steven Spielberg, the Looney Tunes catalog was open to them as well. But the rights to Betty had passed through multiple hands over the years, requiring a separate deal. We wrote that scene for Betty, and if she were lost to us, we would have slotted somebody else in or just written a new scene, Seaman says, explaining how they handled cases where certain classic characters were taken off the table. They weren't shy about having us rewrite stuff, that's for sure. The cool thing is, because we shot the live action first, there was another 2.5 years to rewrite the movie. You were a little bit locked into what the action was, but you could put any toon you wanted and have them say whatever you wanted. Story continues. Black and white superstar Betty Boop waits tables in the Ink and Paint Club. Photo, Hulu. More. One moment that didn't require any rewrites was the face-off between Daffy Duck and Donald Duck, who are engaged in an epic piano battle when Eddie enters the Ink and Paint Club. I don't think people really appreciated at the time how historic that was, Seaman says of uniting these two icons of animated duck kind. Adds Price, people thought, wait a minute, weren't they ever in a picture before together? Don't they work for the same studio? They didn't. That was an amazing thing never to happen again. The writers credit Zemeckis with hitting upon the idea of a piano war, while Williams' animation team deliberately drew Daffy in his earlier, loonier phase as opposed to the more refined, if still explosive, foul he became later on. They mellowed him out over the years, Price says of Daffy's evolution. They made him suave. Originally, he was psychotic, like somebody who escaped from the asylum. Donald and Daffy Duck face off in a never-to-be-repeated meeting in Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Photo, Hulu. More. Maybe the other reason why moviegoers don't fully appreciate the historic nature of Daffy and Donald's squabble is because both they, and everyone else in the scene, are overshadowed by the arrival of Jessica Rabbit, From the moment that Roger's beloved bride, voiced by Kathleen Turner, extends her shapely leg through the nightclub's curtain, all eyes are on her perfectly drawn face and form. Roger is sick about thinking that his wife is having an affair, and you think, well, it's Jessica Rabbit and he's Roger Rabbit, so he's married to a rabbit, Price says. So when the curtain parts, all of a sudden this hypersexualized cartoon character comes out. That was the big reveals, that she's a femme fatale, not some silly character. It's the unexpected capper to a scene that's already filled with surprises. We wrote that sequence to be as crazy as it could be, notes Seaman. Everything else goes away when Jessica comes out. That's what makes it, you know? As the writers remember, they and Zemeckis were kept in a state of suspense as Williams perfected Jessica's design. Bob Zemeckis would say, "Hey Richard, I need to see what Jessica looks like," Price says. And he would say, "Well, I'm not ready to show her to you yet." Everyone was kind of concerned about whether he was gonna come up with this. Then he did. He spent a lot of time working on the mechanics of Jessica Rabbit's body and how her hips swayed and counterpoints the way her bosoms swayed. That whole thing of her taking Eddie's necktie and pulling him closer, people went nuts when they saw that, because it was pretty sexy for a cartoon. Jessica gets up close and personal with Eddie in Who Framed Roger Rabbit? Photo, Buena Vista, courtesy Everett Collection. More Seaman says that Jessica's appearance inspired them to add some new jokes to the film that were definitely not standard at Disney fare. There's a scene